All right. Hello, everyone. Today is Thursday, August 31st. This is the Cluster API Provider Azure Office Hours. Thanks for joining. Just a couple reminders. You can get access to this document by joining the mailing list for SIG Cluster Lifecycle. And if you want to bring up any topics, feel free to add to the agenda under open discussions. And then if you can, please add your name to the attendee list. That would be great. All right, and then also a reminder that we follow the CNCF Code of Conduct, so please be respectful to everyone and raise your hand if you'd like to speak. All right, that being said, we always start with a little pause for anyone who wants to say hello, who's new. So if you are new here and you'd like to introduce yourself, this is your chance. I will mute, and anyone who wants to say hello, feel free to speak up. Andy, go for it.
Hello, yeah, this is Andy. Sorry, I joined last minute, so I didn't request access to the document, but I can request later and add myself to the document. I just have some questions around CAPZ for the private link, having a private link on one of the subnets. So if we can add that to the agenda, that'd be great.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I will add it for you. Cool. And then do you want to tell us a bit more about, how you use CAPZ right now, where you work, etc.?
Yeah, I work at Microsoft,
Okay,
and
cool.
right now we're using CAPZ as a testing cluster for having self-managed Kubernetes clusters.
Awesome. Oops, and I clicked something. Okay. So I just added your question here.
Okay.
Welcome. Anyone else? I think everyone else is familiar face. All right. Cool. So, okay. I had a quick topic here. Just wanted to quickly discuss patch releases. Since we haven't done one this week yet, um, just wanted to let me open. There was a Slack thread. I'll just open the diff. If I can find it. Let's see. And it didn't open in the right place, of course. Okay. Yeah, so this is the current diff. I think, John, you were saying we should do a patch release. And then Matt said we should wait for CAPI 146, which is in here now. I'm saying maybe we should wait, because I think this is only a test improvement. This is one of the test scripts. This doesn't really affect users. It's not really a bug fix either. And then this one is a validation improvement, but no one's waiting on this fix. So we could release today, or we could just release on Monday or Tuesday, with whatever we have by then. Anyone have thoughts or opinions? Matt?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's just, it's sort of good optics to do a patch release in sync with Cappy, but there's no real practical reason to. So there's not much else here. I'm fine with waiting.
John, does that sound good to you?
Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think let's aim for early next week though, so that we're getting these out on a regular cadence. And then, maybe we'll have something else in there by then, maybe not. If not, that's okay. But yeah, if anyone has objections, please speak up if there's anything in here you're waiting for, but I doubt any of these are user facing or anyone's blocked on them. All right, cool. All right, Andy, do you want to tell us a bit more about your question?
Yeah. So so what I've done is I've set up a CAPZ cluster just following the documents. And now what we're trying to do is we'd like to add a private link service to the CAPZ cluster. But in order to do that, we need to disable the private, I think it was called network policies for private link service on the control plane. And then after you do that, then we can create a private link service for that cluster. But the problem is that I'm seeing is I see that the network policy gets reapplied every time. Like it gets re-enabled automatically by the service principal I've created when I'm setting up the CAPZ cluster. So, but I've already created the private link service on that subnet. And so then I get an error saying the service principal can't re-enable the network policy, and the control plane becomes not ready. So I'm not sure if there's a different pattern I should follow when I'm adding a private link service to my control plane.
Okay, so I have a few questions. So first of all, are you adding the private link service out of band, like outside of CAPZ, or are you using CAPZ to add the private link service?
I'm adding it outside, so I'm doing it manually after I've created the cluster. Yeah.
Got it. I'm just asking because I believe there's a PR open right now that adds support for private links. That might be interesting to you to switch to like once it's in.
Okay.
You can try to find it, but yeah. Mike, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's right there, 3747. But as a hack, try enabling a private link to a service through CAPZ, because that will disable the network policies.
So what do you mean by
stop it from re-enabling it, like enable a private link to blob storage or something like that? Or private endpoint, sorry. Private endpoint, not a private link.
I see. So I'm not sure what you mean by enabling it through a service.
So with Azure, you can say, I want to have a private endpoint to an Azure service. So it'll use the private networking to talk to, say, Blobstore, Cosmos DB, or other Azure services.
Yeah.
And in order for that private endpoint to work, it has to disable that same network policy that you're referring to that isn't being turned off in order for you to turn on that private link.
Mm-hmm.
And so CAPZ does support the private endpoints. And in order to support that, it does turn off that network policy.
I see.
So that may be a workaround until there's some more native support inside of CAPZ for what you need via whatever that other pull request was that Cecile just brought up.
Gotcha. So kind of like a dummy service just to keep the policy disabled.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
yeah,
it's
a
good practice to have like a private endpoint to, if you use blob storage or something like that too, because it'll keep your network bandwidth costs down.
Okay. Okay, I can give that a try. Is there any chance that any of you know when the pull request for the private link support might be in?
So our next release is targeting September 11th. So hopefully we can get it in by then and it can be in 1.11. But this is an external contributor PR, so we don't really have control on whether they'll respond to the comments. Feel free to comment on the PR though and say that you're interested and ask, if you can help or how close it is. That might also help. Yeah, it looks like it's getting close to addressing all review comments. So hopefully by September 11th, we can get it merged.
Okay, great. And I'll try out the workaround that Mike suggested. And then I'll wait for September 11th to see if it gets merged.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and thanks, Mike, for the recommendation. Yeah, just curious, what are these network policies we're talking about? Are they Azure network policies or the Kubernetes network policy?
There's an Azure network policy on the VNet.
Okay,
It's a standard VNet thing, that gets
is
set
this
up.
different? This is different from network security groups?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'll look into this. Thank you. All right, Andy, does that help? Do you have any other question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, what is the mechanism behind that makes the service principal constantly try and re-enable that policy?
I honestly have no idea. I'd have to look into it a bit more to understand what's going on. I mean, so CabZ itself is like consistently reconciling, right? So it's possible that
Mhm.
one of the resource applies is causing, but I don't think we reconcile the VNet, so I don't know how that would get recreated.
Okay.
Does anyone have any ideas?
It's possible that it's a side effect of the private endpoint code that I put in place. Not realizing that when it thinks because it thinks that it needs to turn something back off. It's trying to re-enable it back to the state that is that generic default. So it is possible that it's a side effect or a bug. Of just, thinking it needs to disable part of the private endpoint code, perhaps. I'm just riffing here, I don't know.
Is the private endpoint code getting applied as part of the VNet service? Do you know, Mike? Or is
It's,
it separate?
yeah, it'd be part of the VNet.
Got it.
VNet or subnet, one of the two.
Oh, it might be subnet. Oh, okay. Yeah, because we do reconcile subnets, but not VNets. So,
Oh yeah, it's on the
um,
subnet, I believe. The policy is
Yeah, those
is
servers.
this one. So actually, we do have this little code here. So that might be why. So we do allow updating service endpoints. And so what it does is it checks the subnet service endpoints, and if they're different from what you have in your spec, it will go ahead and update it. So maybe that's what's overriding.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is happening. And that's why I think if you set one of them to any Azure service, even if you're not using it, it'll then say, oh, I don't need to turn it back off because I expect it to be disabled already, so I don't need to turn it back on.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I just put a link to that code here, so if we want to look into it more deeply.
Okay.
All right, cool. Anything else, Andy?
No, great. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Cool. All right. So any other topics? I think this is the end of the official agenda. Matt, not to put you on the spot, but would you want to get maybe an update on the SDK v2, all of that,
I
where
was
people can
just
help?
about to do that. I'm having trouble finding the raise my hand button as usual. Yeah. So, uh, well, okay, taking a step back, at one point a while ago, we were going to try and just isolate the services that ASO wasn't going to cover and implement those as SDK v2 services. I think the strategy now is to just get to SDK v2 more or less as quickly as we can, because SDK v1 technically is out of support now, so that's not great. And then as ASO has also landed, and we can stage moving those services bit by bit. But the overall message here is, you can see I made the whole Cartesian product of all the services we're probably going to convert to SDK v2. And they're more or less separate tasks. So if people are interested in doing this, please go ahead and assign yourself to one of them, and then you can look at existing PRs essentially for how to do it. I think the patterns are pretty obvious, but if not, feel free to ping me. The biggest one probably overall has landed, which was AKS, which is the managed clusters and agent pools service. They're not really separable, so we kind of had to do them at the same time. And so that's great. And I think all the patterns are in place, and hopefully it's just more or less grunt work at this point. although it's not totally that simple, I started working on virtual machines this morning and I found out it's sort of blocked by another more trivial service, resource SKUs. And really to do that properly, you have to do resource SKUs first. So if you blunder in here, you may find some things like that, but most of them kind of stand on their own um, anyway, things are moving along. I think we have a fighting chance of actually getting almost all these converted for the next release, and that's the goal right now. If you want to pitch in, please do, and just let me know if you need a hand. Mike?
Random question. I was going to start on the performance testing of the current provider versus getting ready for the ASO provider-based approach. Should I wait until the SDK v2 stuff lands, or should I still move forward next week with what I was planning on proposing put together? I don't think it will make a difference, but I thought I should check anyway, just in case.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, Mike, that's kind of my sense too, that the SDK v2 stuff probably won't affect the performance stuff, at least from SDK v1 to v2. I doubt there would be any difference there. So yeah, I think whatever you can put together now with what we have would be great.
Okay, I was gonna POC that and put together the proposal for hopefully next week, so should expect to see that hopefully by next office hours.
Yeah, it
Sounds great.
could be the case that timings are a little different. Which I tried to keep everything acting more or less the same. But at a gross level, provisioning an AKS cluster, things like that seem to take about the same time, judging by all the PRs we've run. So it's kind of weird maybe to do the benchmarking where some of the services are on. Well, it's all in transition, but I think like John said, it's probably fine.
And if the benchmarking is reusable, I would be very interested also to see if we can run on the previous release of CapZ with SDK v1 on the SDK v2 release and on the ASO branch, so that we can see, all three side by side. And I would expect no difference between SDK v1 and v2, but it would be great to like actually confirm that with data.
That's what I'm gonna hope to figure out, to make it automatable enough that we can run it on any approach, so.
Yeah, Matt?
I'm kind of hoping we see some improvement somewhere because intentionally or otherwise, this effort is moving us very forward in terms of APIs quite a bit. Like we've been pinned to some relatively old APIs to keep things stable, and now we're sort of jumping ahead. So I would hope there's some efficiency improvements because in some cases we've jumped like a year or two forward in resource provider APIs. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
one area where I'm not too sure if there's going to be any impact, or potentially we might see performance regression, is the polar. I know there's a lot of changes that happen in the how we do async. And especially I think before we were using the retry headers from services to know when to retry, and that's no longer possible. So we're kind of blindly retrying, I think, every 15 seconds, which could reduce performance, like either by retrying too often and making too many API calls, or not retrying soon enough if something's ready earlier. So that's just one thing that with ASO we won't really need that anymore. So that's why I don't think it's worth, investing too much time into that, but it might be a slight regression from the previous implementation. But yeah, any questions for Matt on SDK v2 or ASO? Cool. I did want to bring up this issue related to what Matt just said, because we have this essentially prioritized list of features that folks are really, wanting to see in the managed cluster implementation, and a bunch of them have been blocked because we didn't have the new API version. And so with the managed cluster SDK v2 PR being merged, this is now officially unblocked. So if anyone is looking to pick up any of these, most of them are marked as help wanted. So feel free to assign. And I think, we should probably prioritize these features for the rest of the 111 milestone, and then beginning of the next milestone. Long term, I think we want to look into a way to even, more like have more automated integration of AKS features into CABZ, but for now, like backfilling all these missing features is the short-term goal. All right, any questions on that? Cool. Any other topics or questions? All right. If not, so this concludes the official office hours time. For those who do want to stay on, feel free to stay on too. We're gonna just look through some of the issue triage and bug triage. But if you need to drop, feel free to drop. All right. So I think I missed last week. I don't know what y'all went over. What would be most useful at this point? We're getting close to the end of the milestone, so I'm thinking milestone review might be useful. Just to maybe prioritize what we're looking at. But also happy to look at anything else if that's useful. Any thoughts?
I can't
All right,
find
let's do.
I can't find the raise hand, but I think we should do the milestone review at this stage.
Okay, let's do a quick milestone review then. All right. So we still have 28 open ones. Let's see. All right. So actually, I'm going to add the private link support one. We can track that in there. 1.11. All right, so bring your own network interface. I think that one is still under review. Does anyone have any? Okay. Yeah, I think it's waiting for the author to respond. Okay, SDKv2, we just talked about that, so I'm just gonna skip over. What is this one? Why is that still in the milestone?
Yeah, I'm not actively working on this at this point. Maybe we can remove it. I'm not sure. It's a epic feature, so there should be the smaller one in it.
Yep, I moved it to milestone next. Feel free to move any smaller broken down tasks into here if needed. To convert all CI jobs to use workload identity. Ashutosh is not here, so I don't know if we're still planning on doing that. But I think this can be independent of the release, but it'd be great to do that. I don't think at this point we're going to be able to deprecate workload or AD pod identity completely or remove it completely by the release. But if we can at least move all the jobs over so we can get mileage until the next one, I think that would be good. Okay, this one is in progress. He has a PR working on it. I think this needs review. Oh, Azure Go Auto Rest. This is kind of related to the SDK stuff, Matt. Is there anything that's...
Yeah. It's kind of like after we get to SDKv2 and that second item is closed, then we need to take another look and see what vestigial uses of Go Auto Rest we still have, because there will be some, and if we can get rid of them. So I think there's still a fighting chance of doing both of those for the release.
Okay, sounds good. Cap H to install home charts. I'm going to skip over that since Jonathan is oof, but I think that was getting close to ready. Implement user assign MSI for ASO, John.
Yeah, so this one I mean, it's not a draft PR yet, but I have this work pretty much done. It's just blocked waiting for an ASO release that includes the fix that we need to enable this.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
that release
feel
should
free to
be out
open.
next week.
Okay, sounds good. Feel free to open the PR with a to-do to change the branch to the release once it's out if you want to get early reviews. Yeah. All right, add dog for workload identity. This is getting really, really close. Thank you to Ashutosh for bearing with all my comments. And I think we're getting close to merging this. Security rules, NUWAS. I think this is also getting close.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's just one review away.
Okay, cool. This is the PR for that other one that we already talked about. This is about to merge. This is the, yeah, I think this is the PR for the security rules one. Skill sets VM refactor, also Jonathan, and he's on vacation this week, so we'll come back to this. Okay, and then there's all this SDK stuff, which I'm gonna just skip over, but I think all of these are, so Matt, would it be, maybe should we mark those that are like ready to be picked up as help wanted? Would that make sense?
Sure. Yeah, all the ones that aren't assigned are effectively help wanted.
Okay, sounds great. All right. And then finally, private link support, I think just needs more reviews. So if anyone has a chance to take a look, please do. Is there anything that's missing in here that should be in here? I'm just gonna scroll. Feel free to stop me if you see anything. All right. That's all I have. Anything else anyone wants to check or talk about? Okay, if not, let's just take 30 minutes back. All right. Thanks all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, Cecile.
Thanks, Cecile. Bye.